All right, here he is, the NBA man, myth, and legend, the big fundamental, Mr. Riverwalk, T Dizzle, Timmy Duncan. He's holding up his fingers to show us how many championships he's won, just in case anybody forgot. You can ask Lakers fans, Mavericks fans, Oklahoma City Thunder fans, pretty much any fan in the NBA who the greatest power forward of all time is, and 99% of them are going to tell you it's this man right here, Timmy Duncan. I mentioned the Thunder, the Lakers, and the Mavericks because these are teams that the Spurs have all had a rivalry with, at least in the pretty recent past, the past 10 or 15 years. All of those teams have had rivalries, and their fan base has had reasons to hate San Antonio. But just because you hate the Spurs and hate on Tim Duncan, you can still recognize he's the best power forward of all time. Again, Tim Duncan, his accolades are kind of second to none in the power forward range. The NBA is so weird now. There's not really positions, so it's hard to say this guy's the best power forward, the best point guard, the best shooting guard of all time. We'll just kind of say Tim Duncan's one of the best big men of all time because positions are kind of starting to die in the NBA. Everyone's kind of a tweener, an in between position. Tim Duncan was in between power forward and center when he came into the NBA. This was back in '97 when Tim Duncan came in, so people were more fixated on positions, I guess is fair to say back then. When Tim Duncan came in, it was kind of like he's too big to be a power forward, but he's too small to be a center. So he was kind of an in-betweener. They'd call him a tweener, where he's in between power forward and center. He played center a whole lot for the Spurs throughout his entire career. There was a quote where a reporter asked, now that Tim Duncan is retired, who's going to play? Or not that Tim Duncan, it was when David Robinson retired. They asked Greg Popovich, who's going to play center for you guys now? And he said it's going to be Tim Duncan, just like he's been doing for the past 5 or 6 years. But again, the accolades are ridiculous for Tim Duncan. Five-time NBA championship. He won the three MVPs. He's been a three-time Finals MVP, 15-time All-Star, 15-time All-NBA, 15-time All-Defensive Team, which is just ridiculous. Tim Duncan's his GOAT case as far as being one of the greatest big men of all time, it comes off of the accolades, it comes off of the consistency, but you honestly can't find another big man, maybe Kareem, that's been 15-time All-Star, 15-time All-NBA, 15-time All-Defensive Team. It's just ridiculous to be that good for that long. You can get into players like, I was checking out Dwight Howard, I was checking out Dirk Nowitzki, I was checking out Kevin Garnett as well. I mean, Dwight Howard, he had a 6 year stretch where he averaged 20 points, 14 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. Kevin Garnett had a 10-year stretch where he was doing 22 points, 12 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks over those 10 years. Dirk Nowitzki had a 10-year stretch where he did 24.5 points, 8 rebounds, and 1 block. Dirk Nowitzki was better than Tim Duncan as a scorer. I'll give him that with his overall game. He could shoot outside. He could still score in the post. He could score in the mid post. Better than Tim Duncan, at least in the mid post. Duncan was better, of course, in the low post area and just creating advantages for himself and his teammates out of the low post. But I will give it to Dirk in terms of perimeter scoring and just overall scoring. Dirk was better than Tim Duncan at that. KG was a better defender than Tim Duncan. Not one-on-one post defender or necessarily a better help side defender. Kevin Garnett was just a better overall defender. He could defend pretty much 1 through 5. He could switch on a point guard. He was better than Duncan at just guarding the perimeter, honestly. Not as good of a one-on-one defender as Tim Duncan in the post. Not as good of a shot blocker as Tim Duncan was. Dwight Howard, better rebounder than Tim Duncan, at least over that 6 year stretch. And just generally over his career, I think Dwight Howard is a better rebounder just with his strength, his athleticism. He was, I'd say, as good, maybe a better shot blocker than Duncan, at least over that 6 year stretch. But when it comes to Tim Duncan, I mean, from 1998 to 2005, so that was a 7 year stretch. He averaged 22.5 points, 12 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. Just why they call him the big fundamental. He could just do everything across the board. At a really consistent pace, and he did it for 20 seasons straight in the NBA. That's why the Spurs made the playoffs 20 seasons straight, won 50 games or more 20 seasons straight, and yeah, one of the best coaches of all time in Greg Popovich. So people will make the argument. I think Kevin Garnett's one of people's favorite players to compare to Duncan and say, man, if KG was in the Spurs system, if he had Greg Popovich coaching him and had these players around him, he could have had a similar career to Tim Duncan. And Tim Duncan's just a better player than Kevin Garnett was, and I wouldn't argue with people so much. If you plug Kevin Garnett in for Tim Duncan in that Spurs system, I think Kevin Garnett could have had a similar level of success compared to Tim Duncan. Garnett's a great leader. Tim Duncan is just as great of a leader, maybe a better leader. But really, with Duncan, it comes into the intangibles and kind of his intangibles, and then just his accolades is what makes him the best power forward of all time. His career plus minus is 5.6. Of course, plus 5.6 for his career. That's 19th of all time in plus minus. The Joker's number one, Nikola Jokic. He's like 11, plus 11 or 10 points in plus minus. His is just stupid. Michael Jordan is second all time. He's like plus 9 or 10 in plus minus. So I mean, Tim Duncan's plus minus, it's 5.8. It's 25th of all time, or rather, that's his playoff plus minus 5.8. 25th of all time in playoff plus minus. His career plus minus is plus 5.6, which is 19th of all time. So you don't look at his plus minus and say, man, it's insane plus minus. The Spurs were so much better in terms of the plus minus stat when Tim Duncan was on the court, where you don't see, I mean, you see his career numbers. His career, he's 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks, but that's over like a 20-year stretch. So I can find players in the NBA that'll give me 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks over a season stretch. I mean, Victor Wembanyama is off to a better start to his career than Tim Duncan was just in terms of numbers. Wemby was like 24 points, 12 rebounds, and I think 3.8 blocks per game just last season. So Wemby's stats are just insane. But with Tim Duncan, it's really the intangible stuff because you look at his numbers, again, 19 points, 11 rebounds, 2.2 blocks per game. Then you look at KG's numbers. I mean, over that 10-year stretch when KG was in his prime, he gave you the 22 points, 12 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks. So the scoring, the rebounding was pretty much on pace with Duncan. Again, like I said earlier, Kevin Garnett was a more versatile defender. He could play better defense on the perimeter, but he wasn't as good as Tim Duncan at blocking shots, just playing one-on-one defense in the post. I can't think of anybody that did a better job of guarding Shaquille O'Neal than Tim Duncan did in his prime. Those Spurs teams, they beat the Lakers 5 times in the playoffs. 4 of the times they beat the Lakers in the playoffs were with Shaquille O'Neal on the team. The Spurs had kicked the Lakers' ass so many times in the playoffs, and then that combined with Shaq and Kobe not getting along made Shaq decide he wants to leave the Lakers and go play on the Miami Heat. A lot of people would say, it was the Kobe and Shaq dynamic. That's definitely true that was a big reason. But what people don't talk about is that Shaq wanted to get his ass out of the West because he did not want to see the Spurs in the playoffs and get knocked out by Tim Duncan, the Spurs, 4 times. Those 4 times he got knocked out, that was from 1999 to 2005. So 4 times in like a 6-year stretch. The Spurs knocked the Lakers out of the playoffs. So it's another reason why Shaq probably wanted to leave. In that same time span, the Lakers beat the Spurs 4 times. 3 of those times, the Lakers knocked the Spurs out of the playoffs with Shaquille O'Neal on the team. So it was kind of a back and forth thing. But most teams would see Shaq in the playoffs and just get totally dog walked by Shaq and the Lakers. Tim Duncan was honestly the one guy that he wasn't stopping Shaq, but he did a better job than anybody of playing Shaq one-on-one and just waiting for the Spurs help defenders to come over and help Tim Duncan out. But one of the greatest one-on-one post defenders of all time, one of the better shot blockers of all time, one of the better rebounders of all time, one of the best scorers in the low post of all time. That's like they call Tim Duncan, the big fundamental. He'll hit you with the left-handed hook, hit you with the right-handed hook. He'll turn around and shoot his bank shot over his right shoulder, over his left shoulder. He'll face you up. He'll shoot a mid-range right in your face. He'll give you a couple of jab steps. He'll blow by you and get to his little floater. and it looked like he's going slow as hell while he does it. He doesn't look incredibly athletic, but Tim Duncan, he would just kill you. He just wreck you, and he would just have the same face the entire time and just destroy you. And it would just annoy teams so much, honestly, the way Tim Duncan would just kill them and he wouldn't be all rah rah about it. When the conversation for the top 10 players of all time comes up, most people have Tim Duncan in the top 10. He definitely belongs there and he should be there. But a lot of people will overlook Tim Duncan. If I just say the greatest players of all time, Tim Duncan's name doesn't come to people's heads kind of right away like Shaq or Kobe or Jordan's name would come into your head right away. I'm a Spurs fan, so his name always pops up for me. I'm always going to mention Tim Duncan, and 95% of people will give Duncan his respect and mention his name in those top players of all time conversations. But one reason his name doesn't get brought up as much as it should, or as much as some of these other players, is because Tim Duncan wasn't all rah rah. He wouldn't come up and dunk on you and scream in your face. He wasn't getting in trouble off of the court. He wasn't a super flashy player. He was a superstar, but he was never really the face of the NBA. He was never, I guess, marketable is the word. He was very marketable in San Antonio. Everybody has a fucking Tim Duncan jersey in San Antonio. He walked into a restaurant I used to work at, and it was like Jesus Christ walked in the building. Tim Duncan, he's like a mafia boss in San Antonio. He's just, again, it's Tim Duncan, then Jesus Christ comes number two in San Antonio. Just an absolute basketball god. But again, he wasn't a big rah rah player. He wasn't a big flashy player, and I think for that reason, he doesn't get brought up or doesn't pop up in people's heads right away like Michael Jordan, Kobe, Shaq. Some of these other players might pop up, but again, I was looking at the numbers. He's 19th all time in career plus minus. He's 25th all time in playoff plus minus. And, again, 19 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game for his entire career. So his playoff career, he's 21 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks. So the playoff numbers are pretty silly. If you can have a big man that's going to give you 21 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks, you're going to need another scorer next to him to kind of help carry that scoring load. But again, he's the big fundamental for a reason. He does everything across the board, the scoring, the rebounding, the shot blocking. There's pretty much never going to be a play where you look and you say, what the fuck, Tim? Like, what are you doing out there? That was a stupid play. He's almost always going to make the right plays. He's never going to be going too fast. He's not going to be out of control. He's going to be the big fundamental. He's going to do everything really solid and really consistent, and he's going to do it over a 20-year stretch, which is what he did for his career. So people would like to make the arguments that maybe this player is more skilled. I've heard it for Kevin Garnett a lot. He's one of the players that a lot of people want to argue is more skilled than Duncan or whatever it may be. And I'll give it to you. He's more skilled as far as being a perimeter defender. He was a more versatile defender. Like I said earlier, not as good of a one-on-one defender in the post, not as good of a rim protector and shot blocker as Tim Duncan was. People might want to argue Kevin Garnett was a better scorer. I'll give you that argument at least. I wouldn't agree, but he had a better mid-range shot. He was more athletic when he got to the rim and finishing at the rim. But then you just look at Tim Duncan's, just his achievements and his accolades for his entire career. It's not all about championships. Like I said earlier, if that was the case, Bill Russell's the best player of all time. Robert Horry's better than Michael Jordan with his 7 championships. But you just go down the line, the 5 NBA championships, 3-time finals MVP. He had the 2 regular season MVPs, and those are back-to-back MVPs. So it was a 2-year stretch of dominance where people were just saying Tim Duncan's the best player in the NBA. He won that 2003 championship, and he was the regular season MVP, the finals MVP, and the champion all in 1 year. 15-time NBA All-Star, 15-time All-NBA team, 15-time All-NBA defensive team. Tim Duncan never won a Defensive Player of the Year, which is kind of crazy to think that he never did that. Which just kind of goes to my point, though. You can take Shaquille O'Neal's peak. You can take maybe Kevin Garnett's peak, Dirk Nowitzki's peak. You can take players' peaks and put them over Tim Duncan as far as their peaks go. But just over that 20-year time span, again, all the accolades, the 5 championships, 15 All NBA teams, 15 All Defensive teams, the 2 MVPs. I mean, 10 of his all defensive teams were first teams, 8 of his all NBA teams were first teams as well. So, it's just ridiculous the longevity over that time span, everything he was able to achieve. It just makes him the best power forward of all time and just one of the best big men of all time. Again, I'm a Spurs fan, but I try to be really, really unbiased with my takes and just go off of the facts. And again, I've listed all the numbers for Tim Duncan, and his numbers aren't super gaudy. The numbers are great, but it's just the accolades over that amount of time and just being consistent and being able to produce, over that long amount of time and being able to come in the NBA, win a championship in 1999, and then win another one 15 years later in 2014, and basically have the Spurs as title contenders every single year for pretty much 18 years straight until he started to slow down. So, just one of the greatest leaders of all time in NBA basketball, and just the intangibles mixed with his accolades, mixed with his numbers, is what makes Tim Duncan the greatest power forward of all time and one of the greatest big men of all time. Like I said before, if he was more rah-rah and getting in trouble off the court and doing more stuff, I think we'd recognize him even more, for bad or for good. But Tim Duncan was more just a quiet guy. He'd go to work, and just kick your ass, and just go home and go chill with his family and just be an awesome man. But love Tim Duncan in San Antonio. Please like and subscribe if you finished the video. Please comment below what you think about Timmy D. Think if his career has been underappreciated, and we'll see y'all next time.